know your dosha from an Ayurvedic perspective, knowing your unique body constitution will give you all the reference manual for life, like how to live, how to behave, how to eat, what not to eat. That itself will give you all the ammunition to live a balanced living. So knowing your dosha according to Ayurveda is a big thing, starting point to really live a holistic life.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, the best place to shop for unique clothing, spiritual handcrafted jewelry, healing gemstones, and fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now, here's your host, Brett Larkin.
Hello, Savannah family. Thank you so much for being here, for listening. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're talking about grief and loneliness. Loneliness is often called the modern disease of the technology world because despite being so connected and despite what we showcase on social media, so many of us feel dramatically alone in our suffering and our grief. All of us will lose a loved one at some point in our life, and today's episode is really all about that. We have with us an amazing Ayurvedic consultant, Akshata Sheelvant, and she's going to share with us today ancient yogic wisdom from the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita specifically on grief. We're going to learn what grief and loneliness really are according to the science of Ayurveda and how to rebalance your energy if you're going through grief or loneliness. Akshata also really opens up in this episode and tells us about her personal story. We learn about the many emotions and familial conflict she went through after losing both of her parents in the span of 18 months. And she shares really openly with us how she felt just orphaned and totally alone before she was able to really use ancient yogic wisdom to transform her suffering into a really deep spiritual connection that helped her find her Dharma and her life purpose. So that is what's in store. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to remind you the two ways that you can support the show. Number one, rating a review here on iTunes. And just so you know, if you leave a rating or review here on iTunes and screenshot that review, just take a screenshot with your phone and email it over to me at info@brettlarkin.com. As a thank you, I will respond and I will give you a really beautiful PDF booklet full of my favorite affirmations and journaling prompts. That's just a thank you directly from me to you. So take some time to do that today if you haven't already. And the second way you can support the show is by making a purchase on SavannahSpirit.com, which is really has the most beautiful yoga jewelry, clothing, healing energy crystals. I'm featuring today their lace mandala wrap. I've had my eye on it for a while now, but it's just this really beautiful lace shawl. It comes in a variety of colors. I'm thinking of getting it in white to practice Kundalini yoga in, but it's beautiful in black and yellow and blue and all the colors they have as well. So diving into our interview today, Akshata Sheelvant, as I said, she's an Ayurvedic and yoga lifestyle consultant. Her passion is to help women balance lifestyle disorders with yoga and Ayurveda, and she specializes in crafting food medicine for hormone balance, thyroid health, digestive issues, diabetes management, preventative lifestyle. She offers one-on-one consultations and workshops and classes for clients all over the world. And today we're talking very much about her personal journey with grief and loss. Let's dive into this episode. Akshata, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I'm always excited to chat and connect with you, so thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brett. I also enjoy coming on Savannah podcast.
So we're talking today about loneliness and this kind of paradox because in today's day and age, we're more connected than we've ever been before. At the same time, it's a lot through screens and mobile devices, and we actually may feel lonelier than ever before because because there's so much connection available virtually. I'm curious if you're willing to share with us, Akshata, have you ever experienced the feeling of deep loneliness?
That's a really profound question, Brett. Yes, as a matter of fact, I've been through a really long period of loneliness. I call it as a toxic emotional journey. Had experienced this few years back when I lost my parents, really experienced what loneliness is.
And what is it? What is loneliness, like from a Ayurvedic or even just like energetic perspective?
Right. Before we dive into the Ayurvedic realm of loneliness, I think the audience, if they were asked what is loneliness, I think everyone would feel it's a feeling of emptiness in your life, right? I mean, very simply said, it's a sense of strong disconnect, not belonging to anyone, and that's huge. Not belonging to anyone or anywhere. And the guilt of being isolated, I think, weighs very heavy on anyone's heart. And I've experienced all these emotions when I went through the grief journey after losing my parents. And I must admit, it's very painful to be lonely. I was the only child born to my parents. So I think I have experienced here and there what loneliness is, because I didn't have siblings to kind of play with, but I was born and brought up in India, so my siblings kind of filled the void for me. So to answer your questions, yes, I've experienced loneliness big time, and I lost my mother first, and then in a matter of less than 2 years, I lost my dad. Brett, I still vividly remember when I heard the news of my dad's passing, a thought silently spoke to me, now you are an orphan. And that hit me very hard, and it was really tough, right, to get out of that dark tunnel. So yes, I have experienced what it is to be lonely in life.
I mean, I think we all can, whether it's just a momentary fleeting moment, right? Like throughout our busy day and all of technology. And then I think there's this much deeper loneliness that you're talking about that comes the grieving process, or comes when you lose someone you love. And
Right. And as you said, even with the modern technology, we are so addicted to all the gadgets. Our phone has become our third hand. We just can't take it away from us. Just multitasking, we are not productive. Even the modern research findings are showing that we are really not focusing on any task. We just say we are multitasking, but we are not productive in any task. And that's also robbing the attention, and we don't know how to focus. And that also can create a self-created loneliness. It may not come with any major occurrence in life, but it's just with the way our lifestyle is today that we can self-create this loneliness because of all these gadgets and distractions we have. But I also want to point out, Brett, the society also doesn't help either for feeling of loneliness. I also wanted to touch on that, because I think it tends to pathologize lonely people as failures in society. They are seen as weak and somehow incomplete to live a fulfilled life. As I said, I was born and brought up in India. Depending in what culture you were raised, you may be forced to believe you don't belong to that society. You're just shunned out of your group. It's like ostracized, if you will. So that can be really very devastating if you have experienced those kind of emotions, or that kind of treatment from your family or from your friends, or
even if you just move to a new place or new culture, there is this feeling of being an outsider, right? Which I think is really tied into that same sense of loneliness. Like it's a sense of you being different from everyone else, right?
Exactly.
So what is this feeling of loneliness according to the yogic texts and the Ayurvedic wisdom that you study?
Yeah. So we just talked about, how the society treats a person who goes through the journey of loneliness. But in yogic wisdom, it's a different context altogether. And it's beautifully described in Vedanta. Vedanta meaning Veda is knowledge, Anta is the end, so the end of the knowledge. So this is one of the highest spiritual texts in India, from where the yoga, the Ayurveda originated, even the Bhagavad Gita. So what's written in Vedanta is really very beautiful. The longest guaranteed relationship you will have with anyone in this life is with your very own self. So loneliness is your soul's deep calling to connect with the divine creator. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it really changes the perspective of
can you read it for us again, actually? Because I want to really let it soak in.
Yeah, Vedanta describes it, the longest guaranteed relationship you will have with anyone in this life is with your very own self. So loneliness is your soul's deep calling to connect with the divine creator.
That's beautiful.
It is, and it's pretty deep, because if I just look at my own journey, Brett, I feel loneliness comes from a place of thwarted desires, that selfish give me attitude from the world. And I had to really dive deep into my guru's teachings, and my guru is Paramahansa Yogananda. I really dive deep into his teachings, into Bhagavad Gita, yoga, and Ayurveda to literally find a remedy for my grief and my loneliness, is because it was tough for me. As I said, I was relying on my relatives and my extended family, especially my cousins, to pull me out of this emotional roller coaster ride that I was going through. And I was very close with them when my parents were alive. And it was a total shock when it didn't happen. They just shunned me. And that's the word that comes to my mind, is ostracized me. And I was just left alone. I had my husband to fall back on, but I was really looking to my cousins, because it was with my cousins that had lived my life with my parents. My husband didn't know much about my parents a lot. So that connection was broken, and I just felt I was all by myself to heal myself and get out of this toxic tunnel, that dark tunnel of grieving. And it's just, there's so much. You feel shame, you feel like something's wrong with you, you have those guilt. That was really, it was a really tough time for me to come out of it. But after diving deep into this yogic philosophy, I not only understood and got the nuggets of wisdom how to heal myself from loneliness, but today I feel it was a blessing in disguise when I look at my parents passing, So all said and done, it's just made me a better person that I am today, more compassionate, more humble, and more thoughtful. I strongly believe I'm a better person and in a better place today.
What did that journey look like, of kind of going inside and finding that inner resourcefulness? Because I think that's common when there's grief or when there's a tragedy. We're often so disappointed in the way that others react or treat us in the shakeout of that, And for, listeners or other people who are in that dark place, I mean, how was it that you kind of forgave them or healed that relationship, if you have, or just sort of like moved on and came to some sort of, reconciliation within yourself?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Brett, and I hope I give justice to it, because it's, the journey was so profound and deep, and I hope I give justice with the words I choose here, because sometimes language is very limiting. As I said, and in reality, it was something unthinkable that happened, because my mother passed away suddenly. They said she had flu symptoms, and I was living here in the US. They were in India, and I didn't get to that time to feel that she is going, like, you get that feeling, and it was all of a sudden, and it was a big shock. And by the time I was taking the time to recuperate from the pain of losing her, within the span of year and a half, I lost my dad too. But with my dad, it was much softer landing, I feel, because I knew he was going. He had rheumatoid arthritis. He healed himself from that. But then after my mother's passing, I think he lost the purpose of living life, and I could feel he getting into dementia, and he was just losing it. But at least I was there just a week before his passing. I was there. I could feed him. We could connect. We could, talk the final journey of his life and the things we did together. So there was a closure for me from that side, from my dad's side. But with my mother, I didn't have it. So when I look back how I healed my grief journey and my emotions of loneliness, I think with my dad it was easier, because as I said, I follow my guru's teaching, Paramahansa Yogananda, and before leaving to India to meet my dad for the last time, I had counseled with a spiritual minister here, and he had walked me through the process, how you would do it, how you would place your finger on the point between the eyebrows and help him to meditate and take him through his life journey. So I think I had a really nice closure with my dad. But with my mother, I didn't. And she just passed away all of a sudden, just hearing she had a flu, and then boom, she's gone. That was hard for me to embrace. And, when I look back, Brett, I feel I didn't know at that time when I was going through the grief journey, but when I pulled myself out and when I look back now, I was really longing for a woman's voice. And I didn't know why, because I'll tell you, I go to all the services and everything here at in the church that Yogananda's teachings. We have monastics who offer services every Sunday. And once a year, the nuns from the headquarters in Los Angeles come to give services. And it's more like a women retreat on meditation, on spiritual teachings. And I used to love going to it because we used to have them like a luxury. Once in a while, the nuns would come. So it was just for women. But I think I took about 6 to 8 years to heal my grief journey. It was pretty long. And all those years, every year, I just made up a silly reason to not go to those. And I didn't know at that time, Brett, why I was avoiding them. It's only when I came out of it, I found myself as like, oh, yes, because I was looking for a woman's voice. And I think I was relying more on my mother's sisters to kind of hold my hand and get me out of it. Because when I used to talk to them on the phone, when I called them, they used to sound exactly like my mom. And somehow I wanted a closure. And they started looking more like my mom. Their body language looked more like my mom. So it was really a bizarre thing. And I didn't get that. And they were all kind of being very careful. And they just said, just closed doors, just long story short. And I just didn't have any resort. My husband helped me a lot, but it was still a man. I think I was desperately seeking for a woman to hold my hands and heal me emotionally. I was not like wanting a physical help or a financial help. It was more for my mano, my kosha, my mental body.
It's interesting. I feel like, and I don't know if you know anything about this, but I feel like in many cultures and ancient traditions, like even in the grieving process, like men and women separate sometimes, right? In certain traditions, right? And like the women grieve on their own in one way and the men sort of like do something else. Or am I making this up? I'm trying to remember.
No, it might be, Brett, but I'm not aware of it. It might be true because our mental makeup is so different. I mean, men obviously, naturally they think logically, and women more think with feelings and emotions. But I personally am a very logical mindset. I worked in information technology, and I always called myself a logical brain. But during this grief journey, I could see my feminine emotional brain taking over. And I took a long time. I mean, I have to admit. And I think that's also I want to tell the listeners is like, don't put a timeline when you're going through this period of loneliness through a major occurrence. It doesn't have to be a loss of a loved one. It can be a major crisis in life. Don't put an expiry date or a time limit to it. Let it take its own time. I mean, you have to have it's your own journey and it's your own issues. Those are not the same as the other person. So don't compare, but take the time, but make it a healthy one. That's all I tell is like, don't try to self-pity yourself. Don't be into that victim mentality. And, but yeah, like get into some spiritual readings, get counseling, make it positive. Because today, if I say the best thing that has happened to me is it was a blessing in disguise because I spiritualized my grief is what I tell people. Because after spiritualizing the grief journey through the teachings of Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, Yoga and Ayurveda, you know what, Brett, I was bestowed with the amazing gift. I understood the purpose of my life. I came to know my Dharma. What more can you want? And I had no desire to know it. I mean, I think I had the desire, but everyone, why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? I mean, I used to read books. I never knew this journey, coming out of this journey, I would know the purpose of my life. And today, that's the reason I said goodbye to my IT career and embraced this Dharma of helping women to get rid of their lifestyle disorders with yoga and Ayurveda lifestyle. So I think it was very powerful for me. And I also give workshops on spiritualizing grief. That's one of my calling. My Dharma is to let people take it to another level and heal themselves. And it can be very powerful. You had asked me about the relatives. I forgot to say, how did I forgive them, or, things like that. After it took me a long time to heal myself with the grief. I actually didn't even think about my relatives, that they didn't help me in the first 3 or 4 periods, 4 years of the journey. I didn't even remember them. I think after slowly healing myself, like in the 5th or 6th journey, I started noticing it's like nobody calls me. It's only if I call, people just talk to me for 2 minutes. There's never been a conscious approach from their side to see how I'm doing, how am I living my life, is there something they can help me? Nobody did that. And that I realized after like 4 to 5 years after going through my grief journey. But then again, thanks to my guru's teachings, I came across a text where it says, you cannot ask a beggar for money. And that line said everything to me, because then I understood my relatives also were going through I think they were not all in the best shape. They had their own life issues throwing at them. And they didn't know how to console me. And it happened pretty early in my life. In my early 30s, I lost both my parents, and they didn't know how to handle me at that age, I think. And they just didn't know how to offer solace to a person grieving. They haven't experienced that in their own life, maybe, and they didn't know how to do it. So I was knocking doors at the wrong homes, I felt. And then it was easy for me to forgive. It's like, you cannot ask someone to give you when they don't have that. And today, it's another thing happens is like, I always reach out to people when they need it, because I know, and I have it in abundance now. I know how to console people. I know how to empathize with people. And I think those are the gifts that you receive after healing yourself and connecting to the higher self. So today, I don't have any grudge. Sometimes it does come once in a while when I remember a particular story. I just have to think and brush it off. It was for my own good. I don't sit and criticize or bring those acidic emotions out. But it's more been an understanding journey now. I think I learned to accept and understand them.
Well, I think for so many people who haven't been through extreme grief or hardship, they often don't know how to act or what to do for someone who is grieving, right? They just don't know what to say or what to possibly do. So I'm wondering, before I ask you some of the final questions, like, do you have any advice for people who are listening and maybe they know someone? Because I think we all know someone if we pause and think about it. Or it might be yourself, right? But most likely you do know someone who's going through something very difficult right now, right? Like a terrible loss, or the passing of a parent or something like that. And what can we do to help them? Like what yogic wisdom and Ayurvedic wisdom do you have to share with us on that? That's like a good thing we can do to help others.
Right. That's a very good question, Brett. First of all, I think what I had missed, I can only talk to you from my own journey, is like, if someone would have asked, people generally focus on the incident. I don't know, again, it's the cultural issue. Being born and brought up in India, it's a high context culture, meaning it puts more attention on extended family. People love to live in joint families and, things like that more, while US is more nuclear family based and it's more on a lower context culture. So again, this can differ. But for me, I think people were more focused on the incident of how it happened and how my mother passed away, how my dad passed away. Nobody was focusing on what was going inside me. How was I doing? What were the emotions that were racing in my mind? Is there something I can do for you? Do you want me to be there for you? I think those questions were not asked. And I don't know, maybe in the Western culture, they do ask that, since, as I said, I'm not very familiar with it from the Western standpoint. I think how you're doing, what is that I can help, and not assuming that they need a help here and there and just blindly offering help. Maybe asking where exactly they need would be a good start. And from a yogic wisdom, I always say that it was a deep spiritual calling for me. I think if I look back, it was the best thing that has happened. I mean, everyone will lose their parents in their life. I mean, if we look at it, right, it might be for some it's early, for some it's late, because my parents had me very late. So I knew, as I said, I was a logical mindset. I knew I would not have the luxury of my parents in my older years. But still, when it happened, it was a totally different ballgame. My logical brain wasn't even there at that time. So I think asking what help is needed is important. But when I made a solemn vow that I would come out of it spiritually, the advice I would say is anyone going through this difficult period is this is a soul's call to connect to the higher self. Again, a yogic wisdom thing I remember is like every human being on this planet longs in his or her heart a fulfillment that the five senses cannot provide. That is what is written in Bhagavad Gita. This can be attained only by connecting the self to the higher self. So yogic wisdom says every human heart beats a dull heartache, a desperate, silent cry to connect and belong. And when a person is going through a difficult period like this, and if they kind of just hone on to this, saying that this is a deep cry to connect to the higher being, because the real purpose of our life is to connect to the creator, the divine creator who has brought us on this planet Earth. If we understand that, I think it is hard when you're going through the grieving period, but as much as you can, if you can start spiritualizing that pain, I think it will just transform you into an amazing being that you just can't imagine. And I'm the living proof of that.
So far, you've shared with us a lot of really beautiful yogic, philosophy and quotes, and I'm so appreciative. I'm wondering, do you have some just practical things that you want to share with the listeners? Because I know you're an Ayurvedic consultant. So are there just practical things from the Ayurvedic perspective that folks should be doing if they're combating loneliness or grief right now?
So what I would like to offer is, again, going back to the yogic scriptures, it talks about meannesses of heart. It says there are 8 meannesses of the heart that push us into toxic emotions of loneliness and unworthiness. So it doesn't have to be like losing a loved one. It can be like losing a job or financial security or something major crisis in your life can push you into that toxic emotions of loneliness and unworthiness. But the yogic scripture really talks about those meannesses of the heart. They say there are 8 obstacles that prevent us from feeling the pure love of our own heart. And they are hatred, shame, anger, fear, condemnation, pride of pedigree, race prejudice. So these meanness of the heart really emphasize and affirm the ego. So we are like really caged in these, and until we come out of meannesses of the heart, we really don't know what the liberation of heart is, to feel that pure love, that higher love. So when I do consultations with my clients, right, especially for relationships, and I think loneliness is also big for marriages, right? How do you combat loneliness in marriages? So the greatest thing a husband or a wife can wish for the spouse's spirituality is what yogic texts tell us, is like for soul unfoldment brings the divine qualities of understanding, patience, thoughtfulness. So what I say to my clients who are looking for a life partner, I always emphasize to look beyond the physical attraction and the lust. We are not merely sent on this earth to be born, to enjoy youth, procreate, have a career, get old, and then one day die. There's a definite higher meaning for our birth, and it is our swadharma, the righteous duty. That's what the yogic text says, to know our purpose in life. And that, in fact, would be the real answer to loneliness, is what yogic text says. Like once you know the purpose of life, all the loneliness, the unworthiness, all the negative qualities of the heart just disappear or, disseminate. So, Brett, to give you practical advice to transform the loneliness to something powerful called the power of solitude, I can give you practical advice here, from a yogic standpoint. From an Ayurveda standpoint, let's say, is an imbalance. Would you know of which dosha, Brett? Would it be vata, pitta, or kapha?
Oh, that is such a good question. That's hard. That's a hard one.
It's a hard one.
I'm gonna go with kapha, because I feel like you'd feel ungrounded and not secure. But I mean, I feel like it could be vata too, so I don't know.
Yes, your second one is vata, because kapha is predominantly grounded, right? Balanced kapha is always grounded. The imbalanced kapha is looking for groundedness, which you're right. But it's the vata because it's made up of air and space. Ether, right? So the loneliness feeling is basically not belonging anywhere, right? You are up in the space, you don't connect, you need to hook onto something, maybe a person, a family, or something, right? Like as long as we hook our mind onto some chores or some activity, we don't feel lonely. In modern society, most of the people don't want to sit by themselves. Why? Because they don't want to face that emotion of loneliness that slowly comes up. Right?
So it's an excess of vata, is that right?
Yeah, it's an excessive vata or it's an imbalanced vata. So that's the space. So what yogic and Ayurvedic philosophy have a really concrete answer for it is it's in three, it's diet plays an important role too, but more important than that, or equally important than that, is mantra, japa, and yagna. So I'm definitely, I know you know about mantra. So mantra we know is like, it's a spiritually, vibrationally charged words, right? That have been recited for centuries and centuries in India. So it's like a vibrational sound mainly. It's not a language or anything to do with religion. It's just a vibrational sound that has been impregnated with a lot of divine energy. Japa is the repetition of that mantra. So continuous repetition of it creates that garland of devotion is what the text calls us. And then yagna. Yagna means a sacred fire or a ritual. So when we use the mantra and we repeatedly do it, the japa, the repetition of the mantra, that creates a fire within ourselves, and that fire will burn all the inadequacies, the imbalances within our being. So being an Ayurveda consultant, what I like to say is you can say mantra, mantra is what? It's an energy charged vibrational sound. So it is vata, meaning prana. Japa is a repetition of that mantra. So you're using the devotion, the power of devotion to recite it again and again. So that is what? Building ojas, and that is kapha. And yagna is you're building that fire to burn all the inadequacies in your life. So that is what? Tejas, that comes from pitta. So you can play all the three doshas, the vata, the kapha, and the pitta, by doing the simple ritual of mantra, japa, and yagna. So that is what the yogic philosophy talks about. And if you go through the chakra system, Brett, we know about those 7 chakras, right? So the feeling of loneliness, that unworthiness, the shame, the guilt, all these toxic emotions reside in the root chakra, the Muladhara, because that is the chakra that bestows us the security, the stability, and the groundedness. It gives us the power to stand firm on our feet on this planet Earth with our own convictions, with our own thoughts of belief. If that is imbalanced, then that loneliness can be multiplied 1,000 times. So I experienced that. I could experience an imbalance in my root chakra big time when I was going through a grief journey. So balancing the root chakra is also one of my passions. And I call this workshop the power of loneliness, root your root chakra. And I offer that as a free workshop. So if any of your Sivana listeners would love to experience this and get rid of all these toxic emotions, they are warmly invited for this workshop. I do it online on Zoom. So root your root chakra, and that tells you how to balance your first chakra, the foundation of your life. So you might have a very beautiful house, right, with a lot of amazing furniture, a lot of beautiful things in your life. But if the foundation of your house is weak, it's not going to last. Just a strong wind or a thunderstorm can shake it big time. So I think we have to build our foundation pretty firm. And that really helped me, spiritualizing my grief really helped me build my root chakra. And then the sacral and the Mooladharas are all equally important. People say grief, loneliness resides in the heart, the Anahata chakra, right? The heart chakra. But I, in my own experience and looking back into the yogic and Ayurvedic philosophy, starting with the root chakra and then gradually moving to heart chakra is more practical and more productive rather than just going and starting balancing the heart chakra. So I do
I
all
can
that.
see how that would make sense. Yeah, and I will put the info for the workshop right below this episode. I'll make sure to include the link for that so people can do that if they're interested. And Akshata, before we let you go, I know you also have your own podcast now called Dosha, Karma, Dharma. So what kind of topics are you covering on that? I'm assuming Ayurveda and Ayurveda related things, but what else? Tell us about it.
Yes. Thanks, Brett, for asking that question. I recently started a podcast. The name is Dosha, Karma, Dharma, because in my own life, this is firmly believed in my principles. And this is one mantra I say: know your dosha from an Ayurvedic perspective. Knowing your unique body constitution will give you all the reference manual for life, like how to live, how to behave, how to eat, what not to eat. That itself will give you all the ammunition to live a balanced living. So knowing your dosha according to Ayurveda is big time, big thing, starting point to really live a holistic life. Then once you are living your life according to your body constitution, dosha, you automatically gravitate towards doing the right karma. So I say know your dosha, and then I say do your karma. So being a karma yogi, what it says is you are very ambitious in life in doing the things that you are meant to do on this planet Earth. But the key is not to be ambitious for the result, not to be greedy for the result, but be ambitious to do it in the best possible way. So you focus on the excellence, but you don't focus on the result. So doing the karma the right way makes you a karma yogi. But you know that there is a misleading here. A karma yogi does not create karma because he does the karma in the right way without getting attached to the results. But he gets the tag karma yogi, but he doesn't build karma. And then the last is live your dharma. So once you live your life according to your dosha, do your stuff, live the karmic, do the karmic way, then you live the dharmic, is a spiritual attainment of life. So that is a natural progression. Once you have balanced your dosha and you do your karma, you start living the life, the dharma, the swadharma, the purpose of your life is revealed to you, and then you just get fulfillment. I feel like, we flirt with life until we know the purpose of life. Once we know why we are here, we have a committed relationship with the life. And one of my guru's chant comes to my mind, Brett, if you don't mind. I think that really, really beautifully explains what loneliness is. If you don't mind, I can briefly let you know what that chant is.
Oh, yes, please do.
So it is Paramahansa Yogananda's chant called Where There Is Love. This is the chant I chanted many a times when I was coming out of my loneliness journey. And this is how it is. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure loving love? Where is there truly loving me? There my soul longs to be. There my soul longs to be. So this chant said a lot to me, expecting from human beings to get rid of loneliness is also not a real solid solution. Ultimately, our loneliness is taken out only when we connect with the divine. So this chant really was a nice, warm blanket to my heart, when I was going through, and especially when I was longing for a woman's voice, this chant really gave me that solace.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I would definitely encourage everyone to check out Akshata's podcast, and I will of course, link up the root chakra workshop and, the link. You can also do Ayurvedic consults with her. And I really enjoyed the one I did and I learned so much. So I'll put all the information on that down below. Akshata, thank you so much for being with us and sharing from your heart and sharing so authentically with us today. And hopefully we'll have you back on the show soon. And Savannah listeners, let me know what you thought of today's episode, any requests you have for future episodes. As you know, the big thing that keeps the show going is your ratings and reviews here on iTunes, even if iTunes isn't normally how you listen to the show. So if you like what you heard, if you want to support, please take a moment to leave a rating or review. And as a thank you for doing so, if you screenshot your rating or review and email it to info@brettlarkin.com, I will send you a really beautiful PDF full of my favorite journaling prompts and affirmations, just as a gift from me to you to say thank you for taking the time. So I'm wishing you a beautiful day full of yoga and meditation and sending you so much love from my heart and Akshata's. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaeast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.